The battleship is back, not the rusting relic of a museum pier, not a Cold War nostalgia project given a fresh coat of paint, a genuinely new class of warship, the most heavily armed, most technologically advanced surface combatant ever designed, carrying hypersonic missiles that can strike targets on the other side of the Earth in 60 minutes, laser weapons that burn through drone swarms without ever running out of ammunition, electromagnetic railguns that fire kinetic projectiles at speeds that leave no time to react, and enough vertical launch cells to wage simultaneous war across multiple theaters from a single hull. The United States Navy is building 3 of them. The first carries a price tag of $17 billion, making it the most expensive warship in the history of naval combat. It is called the Trump-class Battleship, the BBG-X, and its existence rewrites a doctrine that has governed American naval power since 1945. For 8 decades, the aircraft carrier has been the unchallenged king of the sea, the dominant symbol of American power projection, the platform around which every naval strategy, every threat calculation, every adversary's worst nightmare has been constructed. China has spent 30 years and hundreds of billions of dollars building one strategy: find the carrier, fix the carrier, kill the carrier. Russia has done the same. Both have developed hypersonic anti-ship missiles specifically engineered to defeat carrier strike group defenses. Both have built drone arsenals designed to saturate and overwhelm the layered protection that surrounds an American carrier. Both assumed that if you can crack the carrier, you can crack American naval power. They built that strategy for a version of the United States Navy that is now changing. In this video, we are going to look at exactly how the carrier became vulnerable to threats it was never designed to face, why the answer the United States Navy arrived at is a platform that should not exist according to 80 years of its own doctrine, what every weapon system aboard the BBG-X actually does, and how each one was engineered to answer a specific threat that current ships cannot handle, and what the return of the battleship means for every adversary that spent decades planning for a world where America fights from carriers and nothing else. But first, let's look at the moment the original battleship died, because that story contains a warning that America's adversaries have now ignored at their own peril. 1945, April 7th. The Yamato steams north through the East China Sea on a one-way mission. There is no fuel for the return journey. The Japanese command knows the ship is sailing to its death. But the logic of the moment demands a gesture. The largest battleship ever built, 70,000 tons of steel, armor thick enough to stop most shells the American fleet can fire, 9 guns capable of hurling projectiles over 25 miles, is sent north to engage the American fleet off Okinawa. The American fleet never gives it the chance. Before the Yamato's guns can find a target, the aircraft arrive, hundreds of them. Dive bombers and torpedo bombers launched from carriers that are not even visible on the horizon. The Yamato's anti-aircraft batteries fire everything they have. It is not enough. It was never going to be enough. Within 2 hours, the largest battleship in the world rolls over and explodes. The blast is seen from 60 miles away. Most of her crew goes down with her. The lesson written in the smoke over the East China Sea is merciless. In an age of air power, a single massive platform, no matter how heavily armored, no matter how many guns it carries, is a target, not a weapon. Concentrate too much power in one hull and you concentrate too much value in one target. The battleship era is over. The United States Navy absorbs this lesson and builds its entire post-war doctrine on its inverse. Do not concentrate. Distribute. Spread the strike power across carrier air wings. Spread the command across multiple ships. Spread the defense across concentric rings of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and aircraft. The carrier strike group is born, not a single ship, but a constellation of platforms, each protecting the others, none of them individually holding enough value to be worth the cost of attacking alone. This doctrine works brilliantly, continuously, for 8 decades, until the threats change. And here is the part that China and Russia understand. but have misapplied. They understood that the carrier strike group's distributed model has a center of gravity, the carrier itself. Destroy the carrier and the air wing goes with it. Destroy the carrier and the strike group loses its primary offensive weapon. Destroy the carrier and you have struck a blow that no distributed formation model fully protects against, because the carrier is irreplaceable on a timescale that matters in a shooting war. So they built carrier killers, China's ballistic anti-ship missiles, designed to strike moving targets at ranges exceeding 1,500 kilometers. Russia's hypersonic anti-ship weapons, maneuvering at Mach 5 and above on trajectories that current interceptor algorithms cannot reliably solve. Drone swarms capable of saturating the finite missile magazines of a strike group's escorts through sheer numerical excess. The entire adversary playbook is written for one purpose: crack the carrier's defenses, reach the carrier, end American power projection. What they did not plan for is America changing the game entirely. Until now. The BBG-X is not a response to the carrier killer threat. It is a reframing of the question. The question adversaries have been answering for 30 years is, how do we defeat the carrier? The United States Navy's answer to that question is, what if the carrier is not the only platform that matters? The BBG-X does not replace the carrier. It does something more disruptive. It introduces a second category of irreplaceable platform, one that concentrates different capabilities, fills different roles, and presents adversaries with a targeting problem their doctrine was never designed to solve. To defeat American naval power, you now have to defeat both. And the BBG-X is built to make that significantly harder than it sounds. Start with the hull, because the hull tells the story of what this ship is designed to carry and what it is designed to survive. 30,000 tons of displacement. That number needs context. The Arleigh Burke destroyer, currently the most capable surface combatant in the American fleet, the backbone of carrier strike group defense, displaces 9,000 tons. The BBG-X is more than 3 times larger. It runs between 853 and 890 feet in length, with a beam approaching 115 feet. It is longer than the Yamato, the ship whose destruction supposedly ended the battleship era permanently, is now the benchmark for the ship that is bringing it back, and the BBG-X exceeds it. Speed above 30 knots. That matters because a ship this size that cannot keep pace with a carrier strike group cannot integrate into one. Above 30 knots, the BBG-X can sprint with the fleet, maneuver independently, or transit to a crisis faster than almost any surface ship of comparable displacement has ever moved. The crew runs between 650 and 800 personnel. That crew number is itself a signal. It tells you that this ship is not designed to run lean. It is designed to sustain continuous high-intensity combat operations across multiple threat dimensions simultaneously. And that requires people, skilled people, in numbers sufficient to operate every system at the same time under fire. Now let's talk about what those people are operating under. 12 conventional prompt strike hypersonic missiles. 12, each one capable of delivering a conventional warhead to any point on Earth in approximately 60 minutes. Not 60 hours, not 6 hours, 60 minutes. From the moment of launch to the moment of impact, less time passes than a typical military briefing. Think about what that means for deterrence. For decades, the ability to strike targets at intercontinental range on short timelines has been the exclusive province of submarines and strategic aircraft. A surface ship, visible, trackable, identifiable on every radar and satellite image in the world, has never carried that capability before. The BBG-X changes that. An adversary that previously had to locate American submarines to account for hypersonic surface strike now has to account for a surface ship that is, paradoxically, both visible and capable of striking anywhere on Earth within the hour. Alongside the hypersonic missiles sit 128 Mark 41 vertical launch system cells. 128 cells in a single hull. The Arleigh Burke carries 96. The BBG-X carries 32 more than America's current frontline destroyer. And those extra cells are not redundancy. They are simultaneous multi-mission capacity. Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles alongside standard missile air defense interceptors, alongside anti-submarine rockets, all loaded, all ready, all capable of firing at the same time against targets in different domains. Land strike and air defense and undersea prosecution running concurrently from a single platform that also carries hypersonic intercontinental weapons. And the hull is also designed to accommodate the sea-launched cruise missile. Nuclear, a nuclear-armed cruise missile on a surface warship. The last time the United States deployed nuclear weapons aboard surface ships was the Cold War era. The BBG-X revives that deterrence option in a modern hull. At a moment when the nuclear calculus in both the Pacific and European theaters is being actively recalculated. The message to adversaries is direct. American surface ships are back in the nuclear deterrence equation. But the weapon systems that most completely break with everything the previous generation of naval vessels could attempt are not the missiles. They are the directed energy weapons, and they deserve their own moment. The electromagnetic railgun fires, projectiles using electromagnetic acceleration. No propellant, no explosive in the round, pure, kinetic energy generated by the ship's own power plant. At the velocities the railgun achieves, a projectile does not need an explosive warhead. The kinetic energy of impact does the work. Over ranges of 100 to 200 nautical miles, a railgun projectile strikes a land target, an enemy ship, or a hardened installation with the destructive force of a conventional explosive, but at a cost per shot that is a fraction of a cruise missile, and with an ammunition supply limited only by the power available to the ship. The same railgun, at shorter ranges, intercepts incoming anti-ship missiles. The same kinetic principle that makes it lethal on offense makes it effective on defense. One system, both roles, no magazine to exhaust. The laser weapons address the threat that has most severely stressed carrier strike group doctrine, the drone swarm. Here is the economics of the drone swarm problem stated plainly. A sophisticated interceptor missile costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. A military drone costs a few thousand. A swarm of 200 drones launched at a carrier strike group does not need to destroy the carrier to achieve its objective. It needs to exhaust the strike group's interceptor magazine. Once the interceptors are gone, the next wave comes through uncontested. The economics favor the attacker overwhelmingly. This is a known documented vulnerability. It is one of the reasons China and Russia have invested so heavily in drone production. The laser breaks this economic model at its foundation. A 300 to 600 kilowatt laser weapon with planned upgrades approaching 1 megawatt does not fire missiles at drones. It fires light, coherent, focused, precisely targeted light, generated continuously by the ship's power plant. It has no magazine. It has no per-shot cost beyond the fuel burn to generate electricity. A drone swarm of 200 does not exhaust a laser's ammunition because a laser has no ammunition to exhaust. It burns through the first drone, pivots to the second, burns through that one, and continues for as long as the ship's generators are running. The mathematics of swarm warfare, the adversary's core asymmetric advantage at sea, are inverted entirely by a weapon that costs essentially nothing per engagement. The microwave-directed energy weapons operate at a different layer. Rather than destroying drones individually, microwave weapons disrupt the electronics that make swarm coordination possible. A directed microwave pulse into a drone formation does not require individual targeting. It scrambles guidance systems, severs communication links between swarm elements, and causes the formation to lose the coherent behavior that makes it dangerous. The swarm does not get shot down, it falls apart. The disruption happens faster than any kinetic response, across a wider area with no physical ammunition involved. 3 weapon categories: kinetic hypersonic strike, laser drone defense, microwave swarm disruption, each answering a specific threat that current American surface ships cannot adequately address. Wrapped in a hull that also carries enough conventional strike and air defense capacity to outgun any existing surface combatant in the world. Stay with us, because the doctrinal implications go even deeper than the weapons. The BBG-X's designers understand something that the source document for the original battleship's death contained. The lesson of the Yamato was not that big ships are wrong. The lesson was that concentration of value without concentration of survivability is catastrophic. The Yamato was enormous and heavily armed, but defenseless against the specific threat, air power, that the era had placed at the top of the lethality hierarchy. The BBG-X is enormous and heavily armed, and its defensive systems are specifically engineered against the threats that sit at the top of the current lethality hierarchy: hypersonic missiles, drone swarms, electronic warfare, and long-range anti-ship ballistics. The lesson of the Yamato has been applied, not ignored. The BBG-X does not repeat the battleship's fatal flaw of concentrating offensive power without matching defensive depth. It concentrates both simultaneously in the same hull. The AN/SPY-6 radar, the most capable integrated air and missile detection and tracking system the United States has deployed at sea, provides the sensor foundation for all of this. It sees threats earlier, tracks them more accurately, and hands off targeting data to defensive weapons faster than any predecessor system. Without that sensor capability, the weapons aboard the BBG-X are powerful but reactive. With it, they are proactive, engaging threats before they reach effective range, at the earliest possible point in their flight profiles. The ship's flight deck and dual hangars supporting V-22 Osprey aircraft and future vertical lift systems extend this reach further. The BBG-X is not just a gun platform. It projects reach in every domain. Missiles strike at intercontinental range, railguns at naval engagement range, directed energy weapons at close defense range, and aircraft at operational range across a wide geographic area around the ship. Now let's look at the adversary miscalculation this entire program exposes. China's anti-access and area denial strategy, the doctrine designed to prevent American carrier groups from operating freely in the Western Pacific, is built on a targeting model. Find the carrier. The carrier's position is constrained by its air operations. It needs to be close enough to its target to launch aircraft, which means it needs to be within a predictable zone. Satellites and maritime patrol aircraft track it. Ballistic anti-ship missiles are pre-programmed for that zone. The carrier's air wing is its primary weapon, but also the constraint that makes it findable. The BBG-X operates differently. Its primary strike weapons, hypersonic missiles and tomahawks, reach targets from ranges that place the ship far outside the zone China has optimized its carrier killer missiles to cover. An adversary that has spent 30 years designing missiles to reach a carrier at a range of 1,500 kilometers now faces a surface ship that can strike it at intercontinental range while remaining beyond that missile's reach. The targeting zone that China built its doctrine around does not contain the BBG-X. Russia faces a parallel problem. Its hypersonic anti-ship weapons were designed to defeat the layered conventional missile defense of a carrier strike group. Against a ship carrying laser defense that does not run dry, microwave weapons that defeat swarm saturation before it overwhelms the point defense, and railguns that intercept incoming hypersonic threats at the outer edge of their approach. The saturation model that underwrites Russian naval strike doctrine needs to be completely recalculated. And both adversaries face a deterrence problem they have not fully priced in. A surface ship carrying nuclear-armed cruise missiles and intercontinental hypersonic conventional weapons changes the strategic calculation at the theater level. Every scenario that previously assumed American surface ships were conventional-only platforms must now account for a surface fleet that carries escalatory options across the full spectrum. The challenges ahead are real. $17 billion is an extraordinary commitment for a single hull. American shipyards are stretched. The directed energy weapons are not fully solved engineering problems. The power generation, thermal management, and salt environment hardening required to make laser weapons reliably operational at sea remain genuinely difficult. Construction begins in 2028. The history of first-in-class warships pushing new technology across every system simultaneously is not a history of easy delivery on time and on budget. But the strategic necessity is not hypothetical. The threats that drove the BBG-X into existence are deployed and operational today. China's carrier killers are not a future capability. Russia's hypersonic anti-ship weapons are not a future capability. The drone swarms that can exhaust a conventional strike group's interceptor magazines are not a future capability. The United States is not building the BBG-X to prepare for a threat that might emerge. It is building it because the threat has already arrived and the existing fleet was designed for a different world. The Yamato was built for an era of surface gun supremacy and sunk by an era of air power that its designers had underestimated. America's adversaries have made the equivalent error. They designed their navies and their anti-navy weapons for an era of carrier dominance. They optimized everything they have for the single task of defeating the carrier group model. And America has changed the model. The battleship is back, faster, more lethal, and harder to kill than anything that ever carried that name. And the adversaries who spent 30 years learning how to defeat the carrier are now going to need 30 more years to figure out what to do about this. If you found value in this, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next.